Hey, I'm Nick Breeze.
And I'm John Satrom.
And we're organizing an event series called D.R.E.A.M, or Data Rules Everything Around Me, presented by Mozilla in partnership with Netizen. Okay.
We recently had our first event in Chicago with Becca Ricks. She's a digital researcher / artist hybrid.
Yeah, which is a combo often referred to as a creative technologist.
Her work explores the data that social networks collect about us, how that data is monetized, and how it's often used to deepen social inequalities.
We sat down with her the next day to revisit some of the thoughts and questions that came up during our public conversation, starting with how and why she got into making this kind of work in the first place.
I was living in Cairo right before the Arab Spring. Social media was being used to organize, democratize, and really affect change. And so it really had all this promise, and then the government started using those same exact tools that were being used to organize in order to repress people or to engage in increasingly invasive surveillance. What's interesting is now we live in a time where increasingly there are just really invasive techniques and really innovative techniques for collecting information from us. And I think we need to raise awareness and kind of question those motives. It's not just a technical system, it's not just code, it's something that has really real social impact. And so I think because of that, we need to have a lot more folks in that space who are helping build those tools, not just technologists, not just engineers, because they're not always engineering problems. They're sociologists, they're academics, they're legislators, regulators. Artists are uniquely situated because they're so used to being in a dynamic situation, needing to learn a new tool, figure out how to build something. One of the projects I worked on that was around psychometrics was kind of speculative. It was almost imagining what creepy advertising of the future could look like. I've used the IBM Watson Personality Insights tool. It takes a body of text, it analyzes your personality, and then shows you, these are different personality groups you fall into, here's how you should advertise to these people. It's such a hard decision to know whether the work you're making justifies using those tools. When you're using the IBM Watson API, the information you send to them goes to further build that tool and to improve the tool. And I think as artists, we have a responsibility to really reflect on that and think about how do I compare the social good or the message that I'm trying to send versus just rebuilding that system by using the tool. So I think it's really hard to find that boundary. As creepy as it is, as interesting as it is, I would really love to see a smart assistant whose goal wasn't to get you to buy something. So for example, I think with the Alexa, what you have is sort of this idea of female subservitude that is sort of embodied in the device. And so for me as a feminist, it's how do we reimagine what an Alexa would look like who was a feminist? There are so many alternative possibilities, alternative models we could use. What are the values we want this platform or this device or this tool to embody? I think we just have an opportunity to have a much richer conversation about what these tools are, who's building them, whose vision is embedded in those tools, and how we can use them differently or advocate for different kinds of tools.
Yeah, who's building the digital platforms that we spend all our time on? What visions have they embedded in those platforms? What are the values that we want our digital tools to reflect, and do those square with our own values?
Yes, these are the foundational and necessary questions in order to have that richer conversation Becca suggests we should all be having. We have the data convo all the time, and so we know how easy it can be to feel disillusioned and defeated by the scale of the whole thing, but that's because we're often talking about it from a position of fear.
One of the things that Becca really stressed was that we need to approach these topics from positions of empowerment and agency. We all know that the internet's not the safest place to be these days, but what are we going to do about it?
That's what we're going to be focusing on in our next D.R.E.A.M Convo, where we'll be chatting with Harlow Holmes, the Director of Newsroom Digital Security at the Freedom of the Press Foundation, and an expert on what it means to look both ways before crossing the information superhighway.